Hello BookTube, it's Joshua here, and today I'm going to be doing a reading update. So yeah, I haven't done one in over a month, I think, or about a month, and so I've read for me at least a fair amount, and so I have a lot to get through in this video. And so first I'll just start right away. Um, oh oh wow, hello, hi. Oh. Oh. Okay. Okay. I think she was just saying hi. Uh, well, okay. So, I'll just get going. I started out July reading the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 1, the short story edition, by which was edited by Robert Silverberg. And, well, that was, the original plan with that was that it was going to be a kind of read-along, or at least a buddy read with Steve. But things kind of got derailed a little bit. There was that whole booktube controversy thing, which is just ridiculous. And so that kind of that really I know affected Steve a lot. And then so because Steve was so preoccupied with that, I wasn't sure what was what we were gonna do with it. So I kind of went ahead and started reading ahead of schedule. So and kind of messed up the schedule. And so that it's so sorry about that, because I know a couple of you guys were planning on reading or have been reading along in that science fiction anthology. But I kind of messed things up. So but if you guys have if any of you did read that, I'll talk about it now. I'll try to talk about at least some of the stories. So I'm just gonna highlight my favorite stories. I think I have 6 stories here that I want to talk about. I don't have the book with me, and so I couldn't really go back and look at the character names and everything, and I'm usually bad with remembering those details. So I'm not gonna be able to talk with too much accuracy, or I'm not gonna be able to mention all the details of each story. But I will talk about my general impressions about each one, and I hope that will be good. So one of my favorite stories was the very first story in the anthology, called A Martian Odyssey by Stanley G. Weinbaum. And this was, it's exactly what it says. It is a Martian Odyssey. So I think this was written in the 20s or no, maybe early 30s, and it's imagining a spaceship flight to Mars. And this was, of course, before we had actually been able to send a spaceship into space. So Stanley G. Weinbaum is largely imagining how that would work. He's kind of just trying to predict the science of that, and I think it's a little bit off, and it gets a little bit more off once the astronauts actually land on Mars, because it's not the Mars that we know. It's a completely different planet. It has vegetation and it has alien creatures on it, which we know is not the case in real life. But so it's completely wrong, and factually. But I think once you get past that, if you were to say treat it as a fantasy story, it becomes so delightful. It's a really charming story. It's not. I don't think it necessarily deals with any like super heavy themes, but I can tell, based off the story at least, that Weinbaum is a really good storyteller. I can tell that the story was plotted really well, and that Weinbaum knows how to keep the reader reading, which is all that I'm asking for here, really. So yeah, I really like that story. It was super charming, and I guess I could talk about it more, but I'll just move on because I don't want this video to be like an hour long. My next favorite story in the anthology was The Weapon Shop by A.E. Van Vogt. This was a very interesting one. It imagines, I don't remember exactly some of the details about this world that Van Vogt is building, but it imagines a world where there's an empire ruled by by an empress who's an authoritarian leader, and many of the civilians are fed propaganda by this empire. And so the main character is one such civilian who believes the propaganda of this empire very strongly. He's totally brainwashed, really. But then one day in his little village where he lives, this magical weapon shop appears. It's a weapon shop, but it's very strange. This story is very odd, but that weapon shop ends up. It's kind of really a front for this interplanetary society that is separate from the empire, that actually tries to counteract the evils that the empire is committing on its civilians, or that anyone else, or the evils that anyone else is committing throughout the world, throughout the universe. And so the main character, I can't remember his name, but the main character has a wife and a son, but the son is not a good son. The son is, he treats his parents really horribly. He scams them for money. So the main character, the father, he has to go through that, and essentially it's just the story of him becoming unbrainwashed. It's him because of his son, because his son did all this to him, and then some other larger forces also push him down a lot. He ends up in this life crisis, and it ends up being the weapon shop that saves him from it. And through that experience, he kind of becomes unbrainwashed. He no longer believes the propaganda of the empire. And I'm kind of stuttering as I'm explaining this, so sorry about that. But I really like this story because it provides hope at the end. I like it for that. And I think that'll be a theme with all of these stories, at least most of them. There was something that Denson, the long gone, missing Denson from BookTube, there's something that he said in one of his videos, I think a couple decades ago, where he said that he prefers art that is positive rather than negative, which is just a very simple statement, but it's I totally agree with it. I prefer that as well. And I think that I've noticed that was reflected in this, in my choice of the favorite stories here. So the next story was Huddling Place by Clifford D. Simak. And I know that Clifford D. Simak is a favorite of Pat at Book Chat with Pat. And so when I read the story, I was very curious to see what I would find. And I was not disappointed. I don't think I quite understand the themes of this story exactly. But I will say right off the bat that the writing, Clifford D. Simak's style is so beautiful. I think he had some of the most unforgettable writing in this anthology. Just the way he describes things, it's so memorable. And this is the story. This imagines a world where there are no longer any cities. Instead of people gathering together in metropolitan areas, they've all spread out throughout the countryside and have built these homes. And the story takes place, I think in like the 2200s or something like that. So we're at a point in time where that spreading out, that abandoning of metropolitan cities and moving to the countryside to build houses there that would be passed down for generations, that happened already 4 or 5 generations ago. So now we're looking at a main character who has had this house, this land passed down to him from 4 or 5 generations. And for some reason, as he gets older, he gets this kind of sickness takes hold of him, where he can't leave his own property. He can't leave his own property without getting this irrational fear. It's this kind of mental disorder that comes for him. And I'm not exactly sure what Clifford D. Simak is trying to say with that fact, but I think I need to reread this story because I think there's a lot there to think about. But I just liked the story for its world building, and for that very, very interesting idea of tradition and of your relationship with land. And could that possibly be a negative thing? Could that possibly hurt you if you're too rooted in one place? Yeah, so that was Clifford D. Simak. The fourth story, it was the fourth story that I really liked was "Scanners Live in Vain" by Cordwainer Smith. I like this one a lot. This imagines a very futuristic world with where there's interplanetary travel among the solar system, but the only way that humanity can travel between all these planets is through the use of scanners. And what scanners are is essentially there are these men who have decided to turn themselves into robots. They've decided to undergo a surgery that makes them into robots. Because when you travel through space, I forget the exact details again, but when you travel through space, if you are a living and breathing human, I think you can't breathe no matter what, or you get some kind of horrible effect happen to you. So they have to put the actual humans into these pods or something, or they have to put the actual humans into some kind of safe place, and the scanners are the ones conducting the ships to go to all these different planets, and that's how they go. That's how they transport things and people, and that's how they go among these planets. At the same time, though, the people who have become scanners, they're really no longer human. When they become scanners, when they're robots, they can't feel anything. There's no sense of feeling. I don't think there's any hearing, which means that even when they try to talk, they sound monstrous. They sound horrible. So it's this. I think it's touching on this theme that was running throughout this anthology, which was the balance between humanity and technology and whether they contradict each other, and just that different play of ideas between those two things. And this dealt with that because the main character is a scanner. Only at this point in time, there is a man claiming that he has found a way to travel through space without the need of scanners. Which would mean that for the main character, he would no longer have to be this inhuman thing that can't feel, that can't hear. Because he has a wife and he wants to be with that wife more, but he can't. But some of the other scanners look at this new discovery differently, though. They hear of this man saying that he found a way to travel through space that would invalidate scanners, and they think, oh, he's threatening us. He's threatening our roles in society. We need to kill him. That's what they're thinking. So the main character essentially tries to stop those scanners, and well, okay, I think I've just spoiled it. Oh gosh. But he tries to stop those scanners, and essentially it's just this choice to be human or to be a robot. It's a choice between humanity and inhumanity, essentially, I think. And the main character makes the right choice. And again, it's that positive, hopeful ending. I guess I'm kind of spoiling all of these stories. Sorry, I shouldn't do that. The fifth story is Surface Tension by James Blish. This was fascinating. This may have been, I don't know if it was my favorite story, but I think this had the most fascinating science aspect. Because this takes place in a world where humans are traveling to all these different planets and trying to plant genetic seeds in each environment and then leave it there for years and years so that those genetic seeds will sprout into humans, and then humans will grow in that environment on their own. So it's not humans going to a planet and colonizing it and settling there from day one. It's them planting their genes there, and engineering those genes so that they can match the environment of each planet. And so on one such planet, um, the planet is covered in water, mostly water. So the human call the actual humans, or like the humans that would be us, they plant seeds that would sprout into tiny versions of humans that actually live in the water inside a stream. And so they do that. Then the humans leave, and so that's the beginning of the story. And now we're in this miniature underwater society of humans. Only they're humans that live in this stream, and they're tiny, and they can breathe in the water. And James Blish takes us 4 or 5 generations into this society where these humans they're using their minds to discover new technology, to create new things. And eventually it's just a story of discovery. It's kind of dealing with evolution, dealing with how humans can kind of adapt to any situation, and build from there. So it's this human society being placed in a very dangerous place, but still being able to create technology and realize their destiny in a way. So it's a very hopeful, very, very positive view of mankind, which is maybe what I needed right now. So that was a really good one. That was a fascinating story. Just the whole science part was really good, and it's really involving. The last story that I really loved was Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. And I think this started out as a short story, and this is the form that I read it in, but I think Daniel Keyes turned it into a novel, and so I should read that at some point. But Flowers for Algernon it takes place in this world, but the main character is someone who's mentally handicapped. I think he has an IQ of like 60 or something like that. And there are these doctors who invent, or who are trying to invent, a way to make people smarter, essentially through a surgery, through some kind of surgery. And they choose this person. I forget his name. I'm sorry, but they choose the main character to do that, and he becomes really smart. And it's just I'm not going to spoil this one. I spoiled all the others. I'm not going to spoil this one, but they choose him for this experiment, and it's fascinating because it plays with some ideas about intelligence, the role of intelligence in society, like how much we value it, how intelligence plays out, how someone's intelligence level can affect relationships with other people. And the main character is really endearing, and I will say that it is a very heartbreaking story. So you better get your tissues out when you're reading this. But those were all the stories that I read. Those were all the stories that I loved the most for the science fiction anthology. There were some ones that I hated as well. Actually, let me just take a look at some of the ones that I hated. I have a list here of all the content section on my laptop. I really did not like John W. Campbell's Twilight. It was horribly written. Yeah, it was horribly written. And really not original at all. Apparently John Campbell was influential, but based off of that, I don't think he's that good of a writer. But again, it's only one short story, so I should read more about him before passing a judgment. And Robert A. Heinlein's The Roads Must Roll. I think this story had potential to be really good because it explores themes of class, but it does it in a really one-dimensional way. And yeah, I also liked Nightfall by Isaac Asimov. It just didn't touch me or move me or connect with me in the same way that some of the other ones I mentioned did. Anyway, I won't go on forever. Gosh, I have too much to talk about already. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more books to talk about. Well, 3 more books that I finished, and then 2 more books that I'm kind of starting to read right now. So I read Persuasion by Jane Austen after I finished the science fiction anthology. And this was really good. I buddy read it with Andrew at the channel You Could Be Reading More. And it was a wonderful experience. It took me like 5 days to finish it. I think it took Andrew 2 days to finish it. And it was just such a good experience. It was so nice. I don't know whether I like Pride and Prejudice more, Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion more. Those two are vying for my favorites. I have read Emma and I've read Northanger Abbey. I didn't like Northanger Abbey, but Andrew made the point that it's a parody of a lot of the Gothic novels of that time, and maybe if you've read the Gothic novels of that time, maybe Northanger Abbey will be a lot more funny. And I haven't done that, so I should reconsider. I should read some of the Gothic novels and then go back to Northanger Abbey and see what Jane Austen was really trying to do. But Persuasion was so good. Oh my gosh, I think it was one of her last novels, and it takes place in the autumn, and so you get so many beautiful descriptions of autumn. Something that I think is, if I remember correctly, is kind of lacking in Pride and Prejudice. I feel like in that novel she's not really bothering to describe as much scenery, but she's more focused, even more focused on the dialogue, and which is in itself wonderful. Her dialogue is always great. And she still focuses a lot on dialogue in Persuasion, but I think there's a little bit more. It's a little bit slower paced Persuasion, and it just has a different feel to it. And I wrote a review about this, but I kind of wrote a review almost comparing Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion. Maybe I'll link that. Maybe I'll link my Substack where I wrote it in the description box. But yeah, and so after that, I read Moby-Dick by Herman Melville. Denson, if you were alive, would be very happy to hear that. So yeah, I read this amazing, strange novel, Moby-Dick, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Well, no, I hope it's not a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I hope to reread it plenty more times. Oh my gosh. What can I say? First of all, I didn't understand it completely. Some of the rhetoric was there's such high rhetoric sometimes, such intensely dense and poetic language, and such emotionally powerful dialogue, especially coming from Captain Ahab, that I was electrified. But I didn't even know sometimes what the meaning of, like, I didn't at first know what Herman Melville or what Ishmael was saying or what Captain Ahab was saying at times. Sometimes I just felt so caught up in the poetry of the prose. It's prose, but it's so beautiful, and it just grabs you. I don't know. It was an amazing experience. Like, really. I think this was maybe my best reading experience of the year, even more than Persuasion and The Magic Mountain. It's also, I also really love it because, you hear about, like, I heard before I read this that there's a lot of exposition about whales, and that some people find those chapters boring, but I think those chapters are fairly interesting. Not just because learning about whales does seem fairly interesting, but also when the narrator Ishmael is telling you about whales, when he's categorizing whales, he's still telling it to you in such a funny way. He pulls out all these kinds of hilarious jokes, and Ishmael's voice, his voice on the page, or maybe you could call it Melville's voice, but it's Ishmael who's speaking this whole time. Ishmael is such a character. He has such a characterful voice. It's undeniably Ishmael. You can't really explain it other than that, but you know it when you hear it. It's like recognizing a friend's voice, right? So the novel is kind of this. It goes back and forth between this very high rhetoric, and then it'll suddenly veer down into this kind of body humor almost, and it goes between that. The register changes in the most wonderful ways, and so you're laughing at one point, and then right after you're like just held in the grip of this intense narrative, this intense fervor to hunt the white whale. So yes, that was my experience reading Moby-Dick. Oh my gosh, I want to reread it right away. I'm not going to, of course. I'm gonna wait a year or two to reread it, or I'll get to it next whenever I can. But I definitely want to reread it lots, and like memorize passages. I think there are so many passages in there that are so beautiful that they are worth memorizing. Okay, so that was Moby-Dick. Then I just finished yesterday A Room with a View by Ian Forster. This was really more in the vein of Jane Austen. It's on the surface at least a social comedy. There's tons of humorous scenes, humorous dialogue. So yeah, in that sense, it's in the vein of Jane Austen, but at the same time, it's a little bit more than that. It has this really intense emotional impact by the end of the story. By the time you get to chapter 20, the second last chapter in the book, it's just so powerful. I'll tell you the plot. So the main character is Lucy Honeychurch, who's a young girl, probably like early 20s, and she's English, of course. And the story starts out with her and her cousin, Miss Bartlett, in Florence. Miss Bartlett is her chaperone, and Miss Bartlett is a really dismal character. She's really not likable at all, and Miss Bartlett kind of has an iron hold over Lucy and keeps her from doing anything fun or anything like that. And I think to a great extent, Miss Bartlett represents some of the larger social customs of that time, of the Edwardian era, the very stuffy conventions, and so yeah, they're in Florence, and of course when you're in Italy, I think Italy's famed for being the place where you fall in love, and so that happens. Lucy falls in love with someone. She falls in love with a young man named George Emerson, but for some reason, this love is kind of it's taboo. Lucy can't admit to herself that she loves George Emerson, and that's partly because of people like Miss Bartlett and the larger societal forces around her that don't want her to love George. And so the novel is about that. I'm not going to go any farther than that, actually, because I don't want to spoil anything, because yeah, but it's about that. It's about Lucy needing to find herself, being in a muddle, as the phrase is constantly used in this novel. She gets in a muddle. She goes into the darkness. She loses. She doesn't know herself. She doesn't have any self-knowledge, and she's kind of lost until the second last chapter, where it's fixed and where one character speaks to her, and it's just such a beautiful scene. This is a reread, by the way. I read this last summer, and when I first read that scene, I just had to go and reread it like 2-3 times. Oh, hello, hey. Oh, hey, oh, you need something? Hey. I think she's good. I think she just wants to hang out. Yeah, she gonna sit down around here? I don't know. Hold on, I'll be right back. You want something? What do you want? she just wanted a treat. I think she wanted me to give her a treat. I already gave her one. So, but what was it? Yeah, so I reread this, and oh, hello. Oh, okay. So I reread this novel, and yeah, I had to reread that second last scene over and over again, and I did the same thing this time because it's so powerful, and I don't know. I also feel very, very personally connected to it. I feel like what is said in that scene is just such good advice, and such a beautiful novel, and funny too. Funny. That is all that I've read since I last updated you guys. Now I'm just gonna talk about 2 books that I'm kind of considering reading, or I'm like just starting out and just seeing how I'm feeling. The first is short stories by Eudora Welty. I hauled this a couple months ago, I think in April, and this is not her collected stories, but just a curtain of green and other stories. So just about 300 pages of her stories. It has an introduction by Catherine Ann Porter. I just read the introduction, and I need to read some Catherine Ann Porter as well. I don't know much about her at all, but the introduction was delightful, and there are some really wonderful passages just in that introduction alone. And it made me really excited to read this. So I'm gonna try it out, see how I feel. We'll see whether I read it front to back or how I approach it. And the same thing goes for this thing. I'm kind of like just seeing how I feel. I'm very tentative about these books. I started reading The Second World War by Martin Gilbert. I'm only about 35 pages in, just at the part where I think the Soviet Union attacks Finland. And so this is very interesting. If you haven't seen my previous videos, the only other World War II related book that I read is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and that very much follows Hitler. That follows the Third Reich, and of course, if you're following the Third Reich, that is largely the story of World War II. But at the same time, there are other perspectives in that story. There's the Pacific War, which isn't mentioned at all in Shire's book, and there's you don't hear much about what Stalin is thinking. You don't hear much about what Roosevelt or Churchill is thinking. Whereas I think this gives you a more balanced viewpoint of the Second World War. Shire starts his book with the birth of Hitler. This book starts in 1939, so it's attempting to be a lot more, the focus is different. This is attempting to be a lot more comprehensive, and it's really just about the battles of the war itself, and it's a bit more even. And also, what I really like about this so far is that Martin Gilbert is paying a lot of attention to the victims of World War II. That is really what he's doing here with each battle that happens, with each right now Nazi Germany is claiming a lot of different land. The book starts out with him completely bowling over Poland, and then having his Gestapo. Is it the Gestapo? I can't remember what exactly they're called, but his special police commit some of the worst atrocities in the world. Really horrible stuff, and he goes and he describes it all, and he makes sure to actually dig up some names and provide and give the reader certain detailed accounts of what happened to certain people. Obviously, you could probably spend a whole lifetime naming each victim of World War II, and you would never find the bottom of it. But he just gives you what he can to illustrate to you all the victims of this war. And so I kind of like that approach. I don't necessarily need I don't need my narration of World War II to be all about the heroism. It doesn't have to be about that. I'd rather learn a bit more about the victims, about the cost of war. The thing is, though, I don't know if I'm in the right headspace to read this. The reason why I really loved Room with a View is because it was positive. It had its own drama. It had its darker side, but it ended. You know, when you read a Jane Austen novel, when you read a social comedy, and this is also considered a romance, you expect it to end well, and this does it. But Lucy Honeychurch has to go through a lot before she has that happy ending, and this was really what I needed and what I was in the mood for. I don't know if I'm in the mood for this, even if I'm really fascinated by it. Also, Martin Gilbert, what he's kind of doing is he's taking you day by day. It's a very chronological account, which is not what Shire was not really chronological, or not as chronological as Gilbert's. Like in Gilbert's account, he's actually taking you day by day. He'll say on January 9th, this happened and this happened and this happened, and so he's kind of jumping around between all these different events that are happening and going that way. Whereas Shire kind of divides his book into different aspects of World War II and takes you through them individually. So it's not really chronological because he's going back a bit and then forward a bit and then back a bit and then forward a bit. Anyway, I can stop talking about that. So yeah, I think that's it. I talked about Eudora Welty already. So that was this video. I think I've been rambling a bit. I don't know if I've been very coherent, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found some of these books interesting, or what I said interesting. And I think I'm going to make a tag video later today, or if not later today, then tomorrow. But that'll be all. Bye-bye. Okay, look at this. She drops the ball. It makes me think that she wants me to pick it up. And as I go towards it, no, then it's hers again. And then I try to grab it from her mouth, and she won't give it to me. Oh, and then the belly rub again.